order to actually connect with it and have other people connect with your art. Otherwise, you know, it just goes over the viewer's head or it doesn't mean anything. Maybe let me express a quote that summarizes this. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's something I think about a lot. It's from J.R.R. Tolkien, and it's funny because I find myself going back to like Lord of the Rings a lot when I'm talking about Sleep Token, but they are the ones who have created this kind of historical world for you to enter whenever you listen to your music, but then they consciously take you out of it. So anyway, the Tolkien quote is here's the full quote, and I think that this is a really great example of art and like how you should think about art. The quote is, "Children are capable, of course, of literary belief when the story maker's art is good enough to produce it. The moment disbelief arises, the spell is broken, the magic, or rather the art, has failed. You are then out in the primary world again, looking at the little abortive secondary world from the outside." Now, so that's the quote. So let's just break that down. What he is saying, and he says children, but I actually think that it applies to adults as well. I think adults are more than capable of literary belief, and I think that that's just a part of being a human. But what he's saying is that when you have a story maker, when you have the artist is creating their art, uh, they are creating. If it's good enough, it can create this sense of literary belief where the person experiencing it is fully immersed. But then once you create the disbelief, that spell of the art, it is broken. And Tolkien would actually say that that is a failure of the art. Like that means the art failed because now you are a viewer sitting out in the primary world looking back at the secondary world of the art from the outside. You have now been disconnected. So this is one of these things where music is kind of an interesting one because we don't typically think of music as being something that transports us to a different world. Music is very personal to each individual person. We all take it on our own. Like if I were to ask somebody about their favorite music, usually it has to do with music that they were listening to at a specific time in their life and brings that nostalgia back to them. Movies might have a similar effect, but for some reason, music always seems to resonate deeper and have this nostalgia or more personally to people than like a specific movie. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's the individualistic nature of music. Like you have one singer singing it, whereas like a story or a movie will have multiple characters and storylines going on. Regardless of what it is, I really push back on the notion that music can just kind of do whatever it wants and it doesn't have to worry about creating a primary or a secondary world for you to get lost in. Um, I think that music does that very well, and in fact, I'm going to talk about another song next week that will explain that perfectly. But yeah, so when you create this world, it's kind of up to you to keep the listener engaged in it. If you decide to create the world, right? In this case, Sleep Token are the ones who purposefully pull you out of it. They've created the world and then they rip you out. So let's talk about that. Like why did he do that? So when you here's the thing, when it comes to art and when it comes to music, there's one element that is true, which is that you get to choose what you create. So he gets to decide to do this. It's his decision creatively to use modern language. I mean, and later in the song he talks about like touring and chords and stuff, which I'll talk a little bit about more about it then. But he gets to choose the art that he creates. The caveat here, well, real quick, to clarify what I mean, the artist is the one who gets to choose the story or the setting and the lyrics and the melodies, the imagery that is associated with it, all of it, right? Like you get to choose that. But the caveat is that it's not a total free for all. It doesn't mean that you can just do anything and it's fine. So let me give an example of that. If you have a story, like a literary like a book or a movie, it can have a plot hole. You can have something that is logically inconsistent within the story that you wrote that isn't, you can't just say, oh well, it's okay to have plot holes because I decided to have plot holes. It's like That's not acceptable. That actually that'll do exactly what I was talking about with the Tolkien quote. That's how you remove people from the art. That's how you make it clear that you don't actually take the art seriously. Poems, for example, are another they're another good example because I poems can be silly. I one of the biggest things I hate personally is slam poetry. I think slam poetry is some of the worst garbage ever made, because it's just silly. And there's this point where you can be listening to someone read a poem and then they just start doing that slam poetry stuff and it's stupid. Like I always think about, I don't remember the exact movie, but there's that one where Jonah Hill is going Cynthia, 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 and it's just so stupid. But he's making it up on the spot, and then everyone who just whatever gobbles up slam poetry for whatever reason, they're like thinking he's some genius when really he's just saying random words up on the stage. So, but that's just it, right? I mean, that's what I mean, where these are people who maybe don't care about the actual logic behind what's being said and are just, there to accept whatever it is and don't think about it, right? Uh, which is something that I'm arguing against. So yeah, what I'm saying is like you can have a story that has a logical plot hole, and that's not good. It's not a good thing. It dilutes the integrity of the art. Poetry can be stupid. You can have like a modern art museum where you just have a picture of a red square hung up on the wall. I've seen so many clips or compilations of people who go to a modern art museum and they're just like, taking a picture of every single piece of art that I think I can make on my own, and they'll take a picture of like a blank canvas or a green triangle or some stupid shape on the wall that just looks like it was cut out of cardboard. It's ridiculous, right? Um, Now, with all of that said, most of that is like bringing that around to music. I think music is absolutely fallible. Like you can have bad music. So the whole point that I'm making is that you do as the artist get to choose the art that you make, but that doesn't mean that it's just a total free for all and whatever you do is just going to be okay. There are rules. There are things that you have to abide by. Now you can always break the rules and twist them and turn them, but purposefully putting in plot holes to your story in order to break the conventional rules of a story is not. eh, you're going to lose the people who actually use their brains, for lack of a better way of putting it. And I think the same goes for music. I already said this on the last episode, but Sleep Token to me is music that was made for people who do not want to use their brains or engage with music intellectually. It's made for people who want to shut their brains off and just repeat these religious mantras and be enveloped in the music and not actually think about it. I I disagree with that approach to art. I think that that's a very shallow approach. I don't think that I should have to turn my brain off to enjoy something, and I'm not going to. So let's come back to the Damocles, right? He is free to use modern language here, and there are people who will be totally okay with it, and they will find their reasons to justify. Oh, well, he's not talking about, the sleep token lore right now. He's just talking about his personal feelings and all of that. But I'm like, honestly, I think that's foolish. And he's created this lore. He's created all of this. Um, why say it like this? Uh, to me, because here's the thing, right? He has this beautiful line right before it about blue bonnets and the blades and all of that. All he would have had to say is something like, "If only Damocles would write me back," and we would have gotten the exact same message, but it would have stayed within the theme, the setting that he's set up for this album. So why did he do this? Like that's ultimately the question that you have to ask, right? I mean, assuming that you're not just going to say, "Well, I don't care. I don't want to think about it." Like I just like it and don't tell me why I shouldn't like it. It's like, all right, let's go back. Let's remember we're analyzing music critically, right? Like we're thinking with our brains. So ask yourself, why would he use this line, "If only Damocles would hit me back"? Why did he use that modern language when he could have very easily kept the more classical poetic language and gotten the same point across? Why did he do it? So here's my answer, and I you can interpret it on your own, but my answer is it's a gimmick. I think that he thought it would be subversive and clever to mention Damocles, who is an ancient Roman character, in this way that like, oh, it's my pal and I'm waiting for him to hit me back. Uh, I think it provides this superficial short-term subversion that might make people go like, "Oh, ha ha ha," like, it's like short-term cleverness, but in the long run, it dates this work of art It distracts from the timelessness, it distracts from the setting and the theme. We're clearly not in the Arcadia setting anymore, even though the album is called Even in Arcadia. And so, as J.R.R. Tolkien put it, we have been removed from the secondary world and we are now back into the primary world, looking at this line, thinking, ha ha ha, isn't that so funny what he did there? Like, and it's stupid. And I know like it's funny because we go through these songs chronologically and we're already 20 minutes in, and I'm only on the second line. But let me be clear, it might seem small, but I need you to understand the type of mindset you'd have to have as an artist to purposefully harm the integrity of your own work. Within 10 seconds, we're removed from the Arcadian setting of the album, brought back into the primary world, the real world that we live in now, looking at this artwork as an artwork, not as something that we're actually engaged or have that quote unquote literary belief in. We're no longer immersed or engaged in it. We are sort of doing this meta view of the artwork. And then truth is that he's going to continue to do this throughout this song. It's not the only time he does it. So while this might be okay for people who want to emphasize or who care about Vessel, the singer's name is Vessel, who care about Vessel's struggles like right now in the short term, like in the real world. So like for example, I'm talking about the fan who might be sitting there who really cares about Vessel, looks up to Vessel, and then hearing Vessel proclaim his struggles in the real world with touring and songwriting and the pressure that he feels. That might be engaging in the short run. This is not going to age well for people who come into this artwork and find this artwork later on and want to get immersed in it in the future. This is the type of thing that somebody looking for great art will come upon this in 5 to 10 years. You know, I can't tell the future of how successful Sleep Token will be, but obviously they'll probably still be around. But let's say Sleep Token were to break up and somebody were to come back and find this. This is not something that's going to resonate well in the future. It dates the artwork. It removes that timeless aspect. Usually when people are looking for, you know, albums from the past to you know, invest their time into, they're looking for that immersion. They're looking for that like quality, that artistic integrity. And if they're going into the past to find it, uh they're typically the people who care about that and who care about using their brains and care about finding the best artwork. And they're going to find something like this and think, oh yeah, this isn't really that good. Versus, you know, say somebody going into the past and looking at Metallica's albums or Iron Maiden's albums, and you know, those bands are have a ton of artistic integrity. There's you know, and that's why those bands have the longevity that they have, and people still, you know, new fans will still go and listen to them and enjoy their music. I don't think that people are going to look back on this song with that same passion and respect for their integrity. So whew, there we go. I'm gonna drink a little bit of water, but I hope that all kind of made sense. And I know it's the second line, but this is this is a bigger deal than I think anyone would make of it. It is such an egregious example of an artist who is willing to compromise their own art. They're like they decided to create this setting and this environment, and they're the ones that are compromising it for what? You know, we'll find that out later. But yeah. Okay. So let's keep going. I'm gonna play the rest of this verse. No alabaster carvings or faces on a farthing would prevent my head from fading to black. Okay. So what's so funny here is that this all works perfectly. Like alabaster carvings, faces on a farthing. For those of you who don't know, a farthing is like a coin, like a gold coin. I think it's medieval, but that's okay. You know, medieval is different from like pseudo-Roman, but we'll grant them it's an old term for a golden coin. So all of this is fine. I mean, this is there's no modernistic language here, and it's describing it is describing the state of mind that he has, which is that no amount of success, no statues or, you know, glory by being put on the coin would prevent him from, you know, like you said, prevent my head from fading to black. And you can interpret that different ways, but I think that it just means mentally retreating back into a dark place. Um, so yeah, it's so interesting, right? How this first verse, like, here's all the lyrics. Well, I've been waking up under blades, blue blossom days. If only Damocles would hit me back. No alabaster carvings or faces on a farthing would prevent my head from fading to black. It's like everything is great, but then he just decided to throw in that if only Damocles would hit me back. And it's just kind of like, why? Why'd you do that, man? You didn't have to do that. Um, so yeah, and also I think it's a little bit of a shallow way to even mention Damocles. Um, in the first place. Like I don't mean to continue to harp on this line, but it's just sort of like you're basing your song off of this story and relating it to your experiences, and then you're just like you're going to call out the influence within the song that is being influenced. It's a little I don't know. Like I said, it's just a little on the nose. A little on the nose. So, but yeah, let's keep going. Let's get into the pre-chorus.
And it feels like falling into the sea.
Okay, real quick, I do want to note that the piano on this whole song is great. It's